Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Hakeem Jeffries of New York to talk about this and so much more. Congressman, thank you very much for being here this morning. Do you regret going that far in your comments on Monday?
Not at all. Let me say three things. First of all, our top priority has to continue to be to reopen the government in this reckless Trump shutdown, put Americans back to work, and then have a mature conversation about border security. Second, we as House Democrats are going to continue to focus on lowering health care costs, infrastructure, cleaning up corruption, and kitchen table pocketbook issues. Third, with respect to the comments of a few days ago, we've got to have an opportunity for at least one day a year to have a candid, if sometimes uncomfortable, conversation about race. Seems to me that we can't have that conversation on Valentine's Day. We can't have that conversation on St. Patrick's Day. It's perhaps appropriate for us to be able to have that difficult discussion on MLK Day when we're celebrating the life and legacy of a champion for racial and social justice.
Yes, but you called the president the grand wizard, meaning of the KKK. That's language of the KKK. You think the president of the United States is connected to the KKK? He's a Klansman?
Absolutely not. And as you know, Allison, I did not use the words racist in any of my comments. In fact, Wolf Blitzer in the past has asked me whether I believe the president is a racist, and I've consistently said no. I did use a colorful phrase, but of course I don't believe that the president is a card-carrying member of the KKK, but it did capture a troubling pattern of racially insensitive and outrageous at times behavior that spans not months, not years, but decades. In the 1970s, it was the Trump Organization sued by the Nixon Justice Department for racial discrimination against black and Latino housing applicants. In the 1980s, it was Donald Trump that led the lynch mob that went after the Central Park Five, black and Latino teenagers who were wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted, wrongfully imprisoned for a crime they did not commit. Yeah. For 5 years, it was Donald Trump that perpetrated the racist lie that Barack Obama was not born in the United States of America, yes, which was designed to delegitimize our nation's first black president. Yes. We haven't even gotten into the behavior that took place in the aftermath of Charlottesville, or the S-hole comment countries about African nations, or the fact that he's hired Steve Bannon, Sebastian Gorka, Stephen Miller, and a parade of other individuals connected to xenophobia and the alt-right.
You make good points, and I think that after Charlottesville, it was you who said that the president was a racial arsonist, meaning, I assume, that he inflames racial tensions. And I think that all of that is demonstrably true, as you've just pointed out. But, you know, the grand wizard, I mean, the reason that I ask you about it is because you call it colorful language, but, you know, isn't that inflaming the situation? Is that helpful, likening someone to the head of the KKK?
Well, I think, as I just pointed out, I do not believe that the president is a card-carrying member of the KKK, but he has presided over and engaged in directly a series of racially insensitive remarks. We cannot whitewash that. We cannot hide it. And on King Day, we should be able to have that candid discussion. Now, I also understand why Americans of goodwill on the left and on the right, Democrats and Republicans, progressives and conservatives, want to give this president or any president the benefit of the doubt. I do as well. And I also believe in the power of redemption, and hopefully we'll see better behavior moving forward as it relates to trying to bring this country together and not peddling xenophobia out of the Oval Office in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I think that's what would make America a stronger country.
It is Thursday, the 24th of January of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life, indeed. In many quarters of American society, the grit really has been forgotten. It is the forgotten grain in the granary. And I would please, I would pray that we don't forget the grit. Don't do it. It's important. Not just because it might turn into one of those heritage grains, but because it's really tasty and filling. Nutritious, too. Indeed. Well. Hakeem Jeffries had to explain to Allison Camerota that he wasn't really being harsh in his assessment of Donald Trump. Now, look, Trump may not be an actual card-carrying member of the KKK, though his dad did march in KKK rallies and a couple of Nazi rallies back in the day. But he sure is acting like an acting grand wizard now, isn't he? Inviting the Covington Catholic school choir boys to come to the White House. Will they do it in blackface? I'm wondering. Maybe they can mock the staff. Are there any black people working in the White House right now? I wonder. I really wonder. You know, he doesn't like them around, especially when the mobsters are coming in. Had to clear all the black people off of the gambling floor, when the mobsters came into Atlantic City. Because they didn't like having black people around him, and, Trump was there to serve. Yeah, he's an odorous and onerous individual, and he ought to be in jail, along with all of his family, and let's say all of his friends too. Not most, all of them. Does he have friends? Well, the people he's working with and are working with him. Nancy wasn't playing games. Everybody saying, oh yeah, the right wing is saying, oh, Trump was playing checkers, Nancy was playing chess. I posited that actually I think Nancy was playing Risk and Trump was playing Candyland. But I actually think maybe Trump was playing checkers, but Nancy was not playing games. And he backed down. Has Trump ever backed down before? No, he goes for the jugular. He's the bull in the china shop. There's nothing subtle. There's nothing surgical. It's a flailing about. He almost looked like he had been put in a straitjacket. And maybe that's where he should be kept. But until then, maybe this is just more evidence for Mueller. Does that really matter? At this point, I'm in agreement with Senate Judiciary minority members and the Equal Committee on the House side that we might have to step on Mueller's toes in some of these congressional investigations. Because it doesn't look like it's going to turn out like how it did in Watergate. Does it? Can you imagine if the tapes had been like, oh, well, we can't let the American people hear that. That means that Nixon would be impeached. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, the 10th Circuit will revisit a lawsuit against Kansas police officers who ransacked a family's home after mistaking a hydroponic tomato garden for an illegal pot grow. Yeah, the family, mom and dad, are former CIA agents, employees. Oh, did I mention they were black? The Trump administration's grave breaches of national security at the highest levels are now under official congressional investigation. Yeah, he's been kowtowed with some sycophants for the last couple of years now, hasn't he? And IRS employees are skipping work in droves as Trump's shutdown threatens to derail this year's tax refunds. Actually, I was wondering, what about my mom's? Oh my God. We're going to have to, I don't know, storm the Bastille? What are we going to do here, folks? After the break, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go to the chef's table after that break, where police took Peru's former authoritarian president Alberto Fujimori back to prison to finish the remaining 13 years of his 25-year sentence for human rights crimes and graft. See, it can be done. And an exhaustive report by the Anti-Defamation League revealed that the far right was responsible for every single extremist killing in the U.S. in 2018. Lest we forget, there are some very fine people there now, isn't there? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page, you will notice the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage, that happens to be at netrootsradio.com. How convenient. You will then notice the contribute button. Do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. And your recurring contribution keeps the lights on, the modems blinking. In other words, the bills paid. Your contribution really puts a big dent in that. We are unable to do this without you, so thank you. Also, I am so sorry. There's been a couple of recurring Patreons that I need to get your little reward, which, is that what it's called? Benefit. I think they call them benefits, which in these cases are the world-famous Netroots Radio bumper sticker that you can affix to the back of your laptop, onto your backpack, I don't know, your car, the bumper of your car. And I will get that to you in what was once derisively known as snail mail, but it just seems so quaint now. You will be getting it USPS right soon, because I noticed that you left your address. How silly of me, and I apologize for missing that or not noticing that earlier, and then in the midst of this turmoil that I've been in lately, I just want to make sure I don't let any more slip through. So my apologies on the delay, and look for something in the mail, okay? All right. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that. And he does that and has some rather pithy ways of doing it. Thank you. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and I'm found there as Justice Putnam. And actually, the diary is known as the Justice Department on netrootsradio.com. So either one of those, Justice Putnam or the Justice Department on Netroots Radio, will get you there. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Look for podcasts by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, iHeart. Did I say iHeart already? Well, you can find the show most anywhere, and please do. All right. And if there's any kind of metrics things, reviews or likes and stuff, I put those in. It just, it supposedly helps. All right. All right. Well, we better get on with this. The show's going on, and we only have so much time because Hartman comes up at about 6 minutes after the hour. So, okay. Well, this lawsuit that is being revisited by the 10th Circuit, when this show was in a previous incarnation from years past, we did report on this story, and it has wended its way back and forth. Apparently, a lot of lower courts decided, probable cause is probable cause, and that grants the cops, the law enforcement, implied immunity. Okay? Well, thank you. I don't think so, especially when the cops just trash your house after they've discovered that, there's no pot here. And this is Amanda Pampuro from the Courthouse News Service brings us this. And it's out of Denver, and the Dateline Denver. The former CIA agents Adeline and Robert Hart first sued Johnson County, Kansas, along with a dozen of sheriff's officers who raided their home on April 20th of 2012 after mistaking loose leaf tea they found in the family's trash as evidence of a pot grow. We don't use the M word here in Networks Radio. In the Networks Radio style manual, we fall on the side that the M word might have a little bit of bigoted, racist connotations to it. So we'll use pot and cannabis and attempt to use those other ones. So we self-edit during this. So excuse us, Amanda. Hope you don't mind. The couple's 7-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son watched as officers searched for evidence in their backpacks and underwear drawers. I wonder where else they looked. Neither the officers nor a drug-sniffing police dog found any pot in the family's home, only tea and hydroponic tomatoes. Well, that's probable cause right there. And that's what the cops have been basing their whole defense on through this whole process, and courts have sided with them. Okay. We'll see what the 10th Circuit does. In 2017, the 10th Circuit reversed a federal judge's finding in favor of the officers. U.S. Circuit Judge Carlos Lucera wrote the scathing ruling, blasting the officers' effort to hide behind qualified immunity and warning law-abiding tea drinkers and gardeners to beware. On remand, however, a unanimous jury also found in favor of the officers and denying the Hart's request for $7 million in damages. Well, that's because they're getting a little uppity now, aren't they? The family appealed again, asking for a new trial. And yesterday, their attorney, Alan Pixton of Kirkland & Ellis in Chicago, told the panel that in addition to an all-white jury stacked with members biased toward law enforcement, the judge in the case incorrectly instructed the jury on the scope of the warrant's authority. Interesting now, isn't it? Of course, the CIA isn't really considered part of law enforcement now, is it? Especially if you're black. This is not your typical case, lawyer Pixton said. Once the deputies knew there was no pot in the house, they just kept searching, and probable cause dissipated as soon as they saw a tomato garden. I think he said tomato, but I like to say tomato. When officers failed to find pot plants, they searched instead for personal use cannabis, and eventually broadened their search to look for any criminal activity. They couldn't find anything, and they had to hang something on these people because obviously they came in there by mistake. And if you know cops, they don't make mistakes. At least none they're going to admit, or that you will. Do you dare? Oliver Willis brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The Trump administration's grave breaches of national security at the highest levels are now under official congressional investigation. Representative Elijah Cummings, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, announced the in-depth probe in a letter addressed to White House counsel Pat Cipollone. The committee will investigate breaches of security and protocol and avoidance of the law occurring from the date of Trump's election in 2016 up until the present. Wow, sounds like a witch hunt. The Oversight Committee is requesting massive amounts of documents and communications materials related to the lapses in security that could endanger the country. Has anybody asked Vlad? Now, you know that Vlad is going to impose executive privilege on his papers. And you know that whatever papers Donnie has are Vlad's. Boy, I wonder how that's going to be decided in the Supreme Court. Cummings wrote, the Committee on Oversight and Reform is launching an in-depth investigation of the security clearance process at the White House and transition team in response to grave breaches of national security at the highest levels of the Trump administration, including by former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and others. Oh, you mean others like Jared? In a release, Cummings said similar letters have been sent to Mike Pence, the FBI, the State Department, and the National Rifle Association. Hello, Oliver North. Iran-Contra, folks. Yeah, selling missiles and guns to terrorists. That guy knows all about it. He knows exactly how to undermine America, right from the basement of the White House. Cummings said the investigation has been put in place to determine why the Trump administration and transition team disregarded established procedures for safeguarding classified information and allowed top secrets to be given to officials who should not have had access to them. Oh, you mean like Kislyak and Lavrov? Right there in the Oval Office on Russian TV. We didn't get to see it, but it was broadcast all over Russian TV in real time. Now, current National Security Advisor John Bolton worked with admitted Russian spy and NRA influencer Maria Butina, but the Trump administration has not given Congress the details of that relationship either. Really, John? You were on Russian TV and touting about, we're going to bring freedom to Russia, and Russia will bring freedom to the U.S. For nearly 2 years, Republicans running House committees ignored these serious issues and the massive implications that breaches in security could have for the nation now less than a month into the new year. The new Democratic chairman and his committee are doing the work the GOP refused to do. Well, of course, you know that Jim Dandelion Jordan, he had to wrestle with a few things. And one of the things he wrestled with is that he really has no conscience. He really doesn't. How else could he have allowed what went on in college under his purview to just basically go unnoticed, ignored? So he has no gumption against selling his heart and soul, to a hostile foreign power. He's in these committees to gum up the works now, isn't he? I wonder if we got the Sergeant at Arms ready for that arrest. Matthew Chapman of Alternate brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump's shutdown over the border wall has jeopardized the pay of 800,000 federal employees with increasingly serious consequences. One particularly visible effect is the increasing number of TSA agents reportedly calling in sick, some 10% of personnel, leading to long lines at major airports, which reminds me, the airlines are saying it's not a good time to fly right now. We cannot guarantee your safety in the air. Not because you're going to get blown up by microscopic terrorists, millions of microscopic terrorists that have somehow gotten on board and they're going to kill you. Not because of that, but because there's not enough people to make sure the planes don't run into each other in the sky. Or that they actually land on the runway they're supposed to land on instead of some, I don't know, crocodile-infested West Nile beach because they were directed in the wrong area. You never know. Well, if you think that's bad enough, there's something even worse. And that's the upcoming problem at the IRS. That's right. The Washington Post reported on Tuesday that hundreds of federal tax employees are leaving work, potentially putting tax refunds at risk of delay. Well, of course, the Trump administration last week ordered at least 30,000 IRS workers back to their offices without pay. And I agree. I concur with this assessment. Working without pay is slavery. Deferring your payment, is that in a contract anywhere? Do contracts mean anything to a mob boss anyway? Well, yeah, when he's put a hit on somebody. And apparently the contract that he has made has been a hit on every federal employee and America itself. The risk of a prolonged shutdown affecting tax refunds has been forecast for weeks, but the administration had vowed to continue business as usual even though in past shutdowns, IRS employees were restricted only to processing returns. House Minority Leader Steny Hoyer has warned that this arrangement may be illegal. All of this comes after years of savage budget cuts to the IRS by House Republicans starting in 2011. Wow, I wonder who was president then. Which have hampered the agency's ability to do its job even when the government is open for business. The effect of these cuts has been extremely regressive. While audits of wealthy taxpayers have plummeted in recent years, low-income parents claiming the Earned Income Tax Credit have borne the brunt of what little auditing power the agency still has. Because when you're an autocrat, you always kick down. Pick up, the obvious fruit, the low-hanging fruit. They're easy, and they never fight back. And if they do, how can they? Really, how can they? If the shutdown continues, taxpayers relying on their refund could find themselves in a financial bind, and that may be nothing compared to the hardship of the IRS workers and others who are missing out on their paychecks entirely. You know that little gun girl from Kent State, Caitlin whatever? She's all for the government shutdown. She thinks that these people should not be getting a paycheck at all. That they're just leeches on the government. Or leeches on the rest of us. The government is a leech. Well, Caitlin, I have some, some pork I pulled out of this 52-degree refrigerated walk-in. Would you like me to undercook it for you? Let's get on to our break. And when we come back, we are going to go through weather from around the world and then finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again. from a point at sea to the circles of your mind. A new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Just Step. Ruth Bader Ginsburg now occupies a place in popular culture that is unprecedented for a Supreme Court justice. Just last year, she was the subject of the popular Magnolia Pictures documentary RBG. Now, played by Rogue One's Felicity Jones, Ginsburg's back on the big screen in her own biopic On the Basis of Sex. Producer/director Mimi Leder and screenwriter/Ginsburg nephew Daniel Stiepelman have made a film that starts with Bader Ginsburg entering Harvard Law School in 1956, only 6 years into Harvard letting women in at all. Bader Ginsburg enters 1 year behind her husband, Martin Ginsburg, played by Armie Hammer, who against all expectation is developing a really cool filmography. And all of this is an appetizer for the main dish, 1972's Charles E. Morris versus the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue, i.e. the IRS, which both Ginsburgs argued before the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and in which Bader Ginsburg first develops her strategy for future gender discrimination cases, where the film shows her legal secretary inventing the term gender discrimination. That's how ground level we are here. Stiepelman aptly melds the film's personal and professional plots to tell the same story. On one hand, you have Ruth and Meredith's marriage, which is an even domestic partnership strengthened by mutual support and respect that shines in contrast to the hidebound discrimination that Bader Ginsburg suffers both in her education and in her job, and which she eventually fights in the courts. Felicity Jones plays Bader Ginsburg a little more fiery than fans of RBG have grown to know her as, but it's the more dramatic choice. Behind the camera, Leder tells the story well. One of my favorite things is how she uses Ginsburg walking as both a visual motif and as a metaphor for the movie's theme, that legal discrimination is an evil built step by step and is dismantled the same way. So who's the next justice to get a movie? I hope it's Brett Kavanaugh. Maybe Harvey Weinstein will produce it. I hear he's not doing anything right now. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. When it comes to Saturn, it's the rings that render the planet instantly recognizable. But it turns out that Saturn was not always so elaborately adorned. Data from the final orbits of the Cassini mission indicate that Saturn's rings were a relatively recent addition, forming a scant 100 to 10 million years ago. The findings are in the journal Science. During what's been called the grand finale phase of the Cassini mission, the spacecraft repeatedly dove through the gap between the top of Saturn's clouds and the innermost edge of its rings. These flybys allowed researchers to separate the gravitational effects of the planet and its accessories, which led to a more precise measurement of the ring's mass.
Their mass was the missing piece of the puzzle to determine their age.
Daniele Durante, a postdoc at Sapienza University in Italy, who analyzed the data.
The rings are made up mostly of ice, with a small fraction of impurities, about 1 or 2% of the total ring's mass. These impurities consist of rocky material coming from outer space. Since these impurities are accumulated over time, this allows us to relate the total mass of the rings with their age.
Durante and his colleagues found that Saturn's bling has a combined mass of about 1.5 to 2 times 10 to the 19th kilograms. That's less than half the mass of its smallest moon. And when they crunched the numbers, the data suggested an age of no more than 100 million years. To put that in context, remember, dinosaurs roamed the Earth from about 200 million years ago until 65 million years ago. And Saturn itself, like planet Earth, formed early in the life of the solar system, about 4.5 billion years ago.
Therefore, the ring's formation came long after that of the planet.
The shiny new accoutrement might have come from a captured comet or a pulverized moon. But no matter how they were made, the rings really do make Saturn a solar system standout. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Quote, a federal judge has blocked the Commerce Department from adding a question on American citizenship to the 2020 census, handing a legal victory to critics who accuse the Trump administration of trying to turn the census into a tool to advance Republican political fortunes. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute, and that was the opening paragraph in the New York Times report under the headline, Judge Rejects Census Query on Citizenship. The census matters. It determines how congressional seats are allocated and federal funds distributed. And the question about citizenship, the government agrees, will scare off many persons from responding to the census questionnaire. Indeed, the Commerce Department itself predicted that the question would reduce voluntary responses by about 6 million, an estimate that makes eminent sense given that there are 24 million non-citizens living in the United States, about 11 million of whom are undocumented, and the fear factor among immigrant families, regardless of their status, to answer an official government document, well, that just makes plain sense. However, the decision from Federal District Court Judge Jesse Furman is only the first battle in the legal war. The case likely will reach the Supreme Court before the 2020 census forms are printed in the summer of 2019. So stay tuned. This case really matters. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
It's been pointed out that Donnie Trump has unusually small hands. But who cares? What's truly alarming are his unusually small policy ideas. Draining the swamp, for example. He bragged that he'd be stronger than Drano, promising he'd rid Washington of its infestation with lobbyists, corporate favor seekers, and other swamp critters. But he betrayed that populist pledge from the very start, staffing his entire presidency with CEOs, lobbyists, and Republican megadonors who are gleefully rigging the system for themselves against the rest of us. Also, remember how candidate Trump blistered the behinds of Wall Street's billionaire hedge fund hucksters for getting rich by destroying middle-class jobs? He promised that, by gollies, he would take away their loophole that lets them escape paying taxes they owe. But as president, he wimped out, handing a $1 trillion tax cut to the billionaires, including meekly leaving the pampered hedge funders' loophole entirely untouched. And where's that Make America Great guy who claimed that only he had the vision and chutzpah to rebuild America, pledging to launch a $1 trillion investment in our national infrastructure? His chutzpah petered out and his vision shriveled to a hokey scheme of smoke and mirrors, basically asking states and corporations to come up with the money and calling on them to privatize our public infrastructure. Where's the greatness in that? This is Jim Hightower saying, poor Donnie wants to be thought of as a modern-day Teddy Roosevelt, so he constantly poses as a populist, bigger-than-life bull moose character who's got the right stuff to bust the profiteering trusts in order to stop their rip-offs and their schemes to knock down the middle class. Sadly, though, a pose is all it is, for he's just a run-of-the-mill plutocratic president who speaks loudly but carries nothing bigger than a limp twig when it comes to dealing with the corporate powers.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I read the news today, oh boy. It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
No more food banks, they need paychecks. No more food banks, they need paychecks.
Furloughed federal workers took to the Hart Senate office building on Wednesday. In addition to the chanting, the workers held 33 minutes of silent protest, 1 minute for every day the shutdown has lasted. The Donald Trump government shutdown on Thursday reaches day 34. But Wednesday night brought Trump's first surrender to Nancy Pelosi as Trump backed down on his demand to deliver the State of the Union address next Tuesday. It was one of many fronts in the battle of wills between the president and the speaker. Although Pelosi had basically rescinded her original invitation to address a joint session of Congress, citing security concerns due to the shutdown, Trump ignored her and on Wednesday sent her a letter dismissing her explanation and postponement of the address, writing, quote, "Dear Madam Speaker, thank you for your letter of January 3rd, 2019, sent to me long after the shutdown began, inviting me to address the nation on January 29th as to the State of the Union. I then received another letter from you dated January 16th, 2019, wherein you expressed concerns regarding security due to the shutdown. Even prior to asking, I was contacted by the Department of Homeland Security and the United States Secret Service to explain that there would be absolutely no problem regarding security with respect to the event. Accordingly, there are no security concerns regarding the State of the Union address. Therefore, I will be honoring your invitation and fulfilling my constitutional duty. I look forward to seeing you on the evening of January 29th in the chamber of the House of Representatives. It would be so very sad for our country if the State of the Union were not delivered on time, on schedule, and very importantly, on location." So that's what Trump ostensibly wrote. Obviously, somebody else helped him write it because there were no spelling errors. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi responded with a letter of her own, which Trump was made aware of by a reporter at a press pool spray.
Mr. President, Nancy Pelosi just responded and she said she will not consider a concurrent resolution to have you come to the House on January 29th to deliver the State of the Union. Your response to the House Speaker?
I'm not surprised. It's really a shame. What's happening with the Democrats. They've become radicalized. They don't want to see crime stop, which we can very easily do on the southern border. And it really is a shame what's happening with the Democrats. This will go on for a while. Ultimately, the American people will have their way because they want to see no crime. They want to see what we're doing. Like today, we lowered prescription drug prices first time in 50 years. They want to see that. The Democrats would never have been able to do that. So we're all working very hard. We'll have to respond to it. We'll respond to it in a timely manner.
That part about lowering drug prices is an outright lie. Just doing my part and calling him out on them. But back to Pelosi's response. She sent a letter that read thusly. Dear Mr. President, when I extended an invitation on January 3rd for you to deliver the State of the Union address, it was on the mutually agreed upon date, January 29th. At that time, there was no thought that the government would still be shut down. In my further correspondence of January 16th, I said we should work together to find a mutually agreeable date when government has reopened. And I hope that we can still do that. I am writing to inform you that the House of Representatives will not consider a concurrent resolution authorizing the President's State of the Union address in the House chamber until government has opened. Again, I look forward to welcoming you to the House on a mutually agreeable date for this address when government has been opened. Nancy Pelosi repeated over and over again. Then at 11:12 p.m. on Wednesday night, Trump raised that white flag of surrender via Twitter, of course, where he said of Pelosi's decision to change the date of the State of the Union, quote, "This is her prerogative." Now, since he spelled prerogative correctly, I'm guessing someone else drafted this tweet as well that continued, "I will do the address when the shutdown is over." Next up, 2 votes in the Senate on competing proposals to end the shutdown. Trump's offer to extend DACA and TPS protections for 3 years, and the Democrats' clean continuing resolution that would fund government for 3 weeks and, more importantly, get the federal employees paid. Both are expected to fail. Now, if you were stocking up on popcorn for the February 7th congressional testimony of former Trump lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, well, you're probably out of luck. Cohen on Wednesday indefinitely postponed his scheduled testimony, citing, quote, ongoing threats against his family from the President of the United States and his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. That sounds like witness tampering to me, and it's against the law. Democrats are looking at issuing subpoenas to get Cohen's testimony. And finally, it's another day in America. At least 5 people were shot to death in a bank in Central Florida. Police say a 21-year-old man entered a SunTrust bank in Sebring, which is about 85 miles south of Orlando, and started shooting before barricading himself in the bank. The suspect later surrendered and was arrested. There's no word yet on a motive. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. Vice President Mike Pence lashed out at Venezuela's government on Tuesday, labeling President Nicolas Maduro a dictator and praising opposition lawmakers a day ahead of planned demonstrations. In 2017, faced with a nagging opposition that controlled Venezuela's National Assembly, Maduro created another legislature and made sure his supporters were in the majority. But the National Assembly, led by opposition leader Juan Guaido, has struck back, and last week declared Maduro to be illegally usurping power, a move that Pence vocally endorsed.
The United States joins with all freedom-loving nations in recognizing the National Assembly as the last vestige of democracy in your country, for it's the only body elected by you, the people.
If the opposition can keep this as a battle between the Venezuelan people and the government, and if they can have a good turnout in the protest tomorrow, well, that could be demoralizing for the government.
David Smiley is a senior fellow at the Washington Office on Latin America.
But when Mike Pence puts out a video like this makes it into a conflict between the United States and the Maduro government, and that's the terrain where the Maduro government is much more comfortable.
Case in point, top Venezuelan officials have already responded to Pence, saying, "Yankee, get out." Yet by most accounts, the U.S. is only likely to get more involved. Pushed by figures like Senator Marco Rubio, the White House is considering whether to recognize Guaido as Venezuela's rightful president, a bold step considering Guaido himself, one of the few opposition figures not in prison, has yet to officially claim power.
So if he does it too soon, without real support in the population, in the military, then it's just going to backfire, and he'll just get arrested. If he waits too long, well, he might get arrested anyway. And so he has kind of a window of opportunity. I think the key here is to let him and the opposition decide when that moment is and not try to push that from the outside.
Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in our lives, folks. Well, we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 42 degrees. Oh my. We are forecast to be a bit warmer than yesterday. It looks like actually we're going to be in the mid to upper 50s for the next several days, and our overnight lows will be in the mid to upper 30s. Well, okay then. We do have a little bit of drizzle right now, and we had a little bit of rain last night. Not the quarter inch that they said we were going to have, at least not in our little area here. We are in a protected valley, I should say. But it is drizzly at the moment and will remain cloudy with, looks like heavy mist is what we call it. Other people would call it a drizzle, but it's heavy mist to us. We'll have that for the next several days. Winds are out of the north-northeast at a negligible 1 to 2 miles per hour, which makes it light and variable. And those winds will remain out of the north-northeast for a few days and will remain light and variable. Pollen is rated as none. The air quality index is a little bit lower than yesterday, now at 53 parts per million, in the moderate range, unhealthy for especially those who have breathing issues. And the daytime UV index is rated at 2, and that's in the low green range. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.22 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 88%. Well then, that explains a lot right there. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. In fact, there's a personal planted weather station just not very far from where I'm at right now, less than a quarter mile. This new one is actually giving me much more accurate weather where the mothership is, and we like that. All right. London is currently 40 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 37 and cloudy. Rome is 49 degrees and partly cloudy. Kiev is 17 and fair. Kabul is 21 degrees and clear. Stay inside. Don't go out. Even that might not help you, but don't be a target. Hong Kong is 57 and clear. Tokyo is 39 degrees Fahrenheit and fair, and they remain to have a dry air weather advisory. Ouch. Sydney, Australia is 76 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. Of course, they do everything in Celsius there. San Francisco is 47 degrees and sunny. And New York is 54 degrees Fahrenheit with rain and a weather advisory of a gale warning. So I would suggest that you batten down those hatches, you button up that top button, you stay warm and dry, and that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Mitra Taj and Marco Aquino of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Police took Peru's former authoritarian president Alberto Fujimori back to prison on Wednesday to finish the remaining 13 years of his 25-year sentence for human rights crimes and graft. Oh my. A court-appointed medical panel concluded last week that Fujimori, 80, was healthy enough to be forced from the local hospital where he was rushed for treatment in October, right after a judge annulled a pardon granted to him in 2017. Now remember that Fujimori was a right-wing populist, like a Nazi. They always say that about right-wing guys, Nazis. Oh, they're populists. Now they're Nazis. Who led Peru from 1990 to 2000, has said for years that he suffers from life-threatening health problems, including heart issues, that should exempt him from prison. Yeah, for years. And as critics say, he is exaggerating and should not receive special treatment. Well, of course. This guy is a grifter, and he accepts graft, too. The medical panel found him to be in stable condition. He was discharged by the hospital on Wednesday. The white truck he was transported in was followed by local media, which showed him sitting next to his son Kenji. The head of Peru's Penitentiary Institute said Fujimori will have access to a doctor during the day and around-the-clock nurses. I will say, 80 is pretty old. It's hard in prison, even if you are living the life of Flynn. And I know that's mixing metaphors. It doesn't make any sense, but you get it. Karma is karma. It's not good or bad. It just is, and Fujimori is getting his. His supporters had cheered when he was pardoned over a little over a year ago by former President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, who said he did not want Fujimori to die in prison. But the so-called humanitarian pardon was widely seen as political payback, as it came days after Fujimori's supporters in Congress saved Kuczynski from near impeachment. Oh, tit for tat.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Matthew Chapman of Alternate brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Wednesday report from the Anti-Defamation League documented every known extremist killing in the United States in 2018, and guess what? The right-wing extremists were responsible for every single one. Right-wing extremists killed 50 people last year, mostly with firearms, making them responsible for more deaths than in any year since 1995. And that was a big year for right-wing extremists. The report focuses on incidents like the February mass school shooting in Parkland, committed by a teenager who expressed sympathy towards the white supremacist ideology, the massacre of Pittsburgh's Tree of Life synagogue by an avowed anti-Semite, and the shooting spree at a Tallahassee yoga studio by a man bent on committing violence against women. Guns were responsible for 42 of the 50 deaths documented by the ADL. Now, the ADL's list may not even capture the full scope of right-wing terror in 2018. For example, it would not include Cesar Sayoc, the pro-Trump Florida bodybuilder who sent a series of pipe bombs to Democratic officials because, mercifully, none of his bombs killed anyone. Well, it would have added to it. Since Donald Trump was elected, the number of hate crimes has risen sharply. In addition to violent rhetoric about his political opponents, Trump and his GOP allies have fanned the flames of right-wing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about liberal Hungarian-born Jewish billionaire George Soros, none of which has contributed positively to political tensions in America. And just as Vlad mandated it at Helsinki. All right, let's get out of here because our broadcast period is coming to an end real quick. Do stay tuned to Netroots Radio. We'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Friday. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.